One of the other things that's just a part of my work life is what I call business meetings with God. And it's something actually I mentor and teach others in as well. Because, going back to the idea when we were talking about with Kingdom-Driven Entrepreneur, I'm all about with God, not just for God. So I actually want to seek God around things concerning business. Concerning life, of course, as well, but absolutely concerning business. And so that's something that I specifically take time to do. And when I think about rest, John, I'm not thinking just about rest from a physical perspective. I'm also thinking about rest from just an active awareness of the presence of God with me, the active awareness of the presence of divine wisdom that I can seek with me at all times, as opposed to I got to do all the things in my own strength and then take a little break, go give it God, take a break later, right?
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and I'm your host, John Gallagher, and I am super excited about my guest today. Kingdom impact in business and life is one of those topics that's near and dear to my heart. It's become that way over the past few years, and we're about to receive a masterclass in Kingdom Impact. My guest today is Shae Bynes, the best-selling author of Grace Over Grind, How Grace Will Take Your Business Where Grinding Can't. And she's a pioneer in the kingdom business movement. Now, pioneer, I'll be careful, Shae. That takes us back even to how old we might be in some of the things that we have. We've got some shared experiences here that, with her leadership in a Fortune 50 company, in which we worked for the same company before, spending ultimately the last decade as a founder and executive advisor and an author. She's a master at helping high performers trade hustle for holy alignment and brings an energy that's sure to impact you today. So Shae Bynes, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. Great to have you on the guest. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, and thanks for having me, John.
No, it's going to be a blast. We kind of chat a little bit before we hit the record button. That makes me excited about how much fun we can have in this conversation. But I'll start you off with the same first topic that I start off with all first-time guests, and that's to tell me a story from your childhood that still impacts who you may be today as a person or as a leader.
Sure. So I'm actually thinking about a story that my mother told me. She rests in heaven, Mom. But maybe about 10 years ago, my mom had shared with me a story, things about me as a child that made so much sense now. And two things that come up for me are, one of the things she shared was that she never wanted to take long rides without me, because she said, if I was going to have a long ride and I thought I was going to be tired, I wanted you with me because you were so engaging. You would have things, you'd have great questions and great conversations. So I always wanted to have you with me. And the other thing she said is that I never took answers at face value. So I was always the one to ask why. I always wanted to understand, not because I didn't want to do it or whatever. I just always wanted to understand the reasons behind the answers that I was given. And when she shared that with me, I just laughed because, she was saying it just makes so much sense based off of the work that you do now with entrepreneurs and leaders and podcasting and the media stuff, because this is who you are. And so that was kind of fun to see.
Well, that's so cool. I love connecting some of those things all the way back. The stories, again, they weave their way through all of our conversations. So the title you have, Chief Fire Igniter, makes sense in terms of what happens there. Your message, though, is about grace over grind. Now, if I say grace to a leader, they might think soft. And Chief Fire Igniter is a little bit different. Bringing those two things together for me. What is this Chief Fire Igniter and how grace over grind really helps?
Yeah, so it's funny. So the Chief Fire Igniter actually goes back to probably about 13 years ago, when it was actually from a Bible study. And the Lord was showing me all these various ways that fire was represented in the Bible to represent his power, his presence, his purity, like his love, his passion, his love. And he was actually showing me how my assignment and how I showed up as a mentor, as a teacher with the work I was doing with Kingdom-Driven Entrepreneur, and as an activator was all around releasing that to others so that they could multiply that in their spheres of influence, right? So that's where Chief Fire Igniter came from.
Excellent. I understand it then a lot more, and I love the connection there as well. Use term kingdom-driven entrepreneur. What's a kingdom-driven entrepreneur?
Yeah, so we kind of have to break down each word, right? So we're talking about kingdom. I'm talking about the kingdom of God, the government of God, the realm of heaven. So that's what I'm talking about with the kingdom. Driven actually has two core definitions. One of them is motivated by, and the other one is propelled forward. And then we all know what an entrepreneur is. So when we say kingdom-driven entrepreneur, we're saying that your entrepreneurial endeavors are motivated by and propelled forward by the kingdom of God and advancing the kingdom of God in the marketplace. So that was part of my work. That started in 2012. My husband's now the CEO. We have a great team, which released me to do some other things. And I still advise Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, but that movement is at the core of my heart. That was really a huge transition for me out of leaving my corporate career into how God was leading me, how to show up as a business person and then how to serve others and help them to do the same.
So cool. Goodness gracious. So the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, motivated and propelled forward, inspired and encouraged to move forward, to impact. And now you've got to equip other leaders with regards to the work that you're doing as well through your podcast, through your books. So cool to hear that. And likely working with your husband as well as Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. You touched on, again, back to the secular world of that large company that we work with together. Was there a moment, Shae, that you said, it's time for, well, two things. One is, were you able to share kind of that kingdom vision while you're at work? But secondly, they said, no, I'm meant to do this somewhere else.
Honestly, it was not even on my radar in my corporate days. It's very interesting. I grew up in church, so my faith journey is very long as I can remember. I lived, at the time I was working my corporate career, I would say I was living a very compartmentalized life, kind of spiritually with my work and all those things. It wasn't like I was avoiding, I was myself. But I didn't have like the depth of personal relationship with God at that time. It was very compartmentalized. I went to church faithfully. I operated in integrity, all of those things. I was a very principled person. But that connection didn't happen for me in my corporate years, which was right out of college in those next, I was there at IBM for almost 11 years. And so that wasn't part of my story. It was interesting, John, because it was an encounter with God that led me to even leave my corporate career. And I started growing in my own personal relationship with God in the context of my work as he was showing me how he was going to be taking me out of my corporate career. And I had a business on the side. So I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, just part-time while I was working in business, or while I was working my corporate career. But that was where it was like my journey from that perspective as it connects to work, which is what you were bringing up. That happened with intention in my last 18 months, really, of my time at IBM. But I will tell you this, John, it's so funny. I was in Texas recently speaking at an event, and I was just kind of connecting with some people that I knew, prior to my speaking thing. And one of the ladies that was there was someone I recruited while I was working at IBM many, many, many years ago. And she said to me, Shae, I just wanted to tell you that I knew you were a woman of great faith when I met you, when you were working. I had no context for this, John, but she said the way I showed up and the way that I served her, she knew that, Jesus was like Lord of my life. And I thought that was really interesting because I was like, I wasn't even making the connection. I was just being myself,
So I think that's so cool. Part of that is, just some of the things that I've been through the past few years of that compartmentalized life. And it was an encounter with a mentor who said, John, you talk about this all the time. You're a mentor to me with regards to your faith, but it's not showing up in your writing. It's not showing up in your business, how you talk about it. And, as I really was challenged at that point in time, and whether, he was a vessel to have God talking to me to say, hey, it's time to you stop compartmentalizing this. In our worlds, that Sunday life, while very important, and to your point, as much of a development, is a very small piece of the hours that we're awake. And yet our business place is another place of ministry that exists. The term that I like to use sometimes with that is that it's a move from key performance indicators that are very important to business, and you've talked about it, revenue, margin, quality, service, over to kingdom performance indicators and those other things that involve. So when you're working with organizations right now and you talk about the kingdom-driven entrepreneur, what are some of those metrics you're talking about to them with regards to kingdom in their business?
I love that question. So one of the core things is around holistic profitability. So we say profitability, that's not only financial, but also eternal. And so we'll break that down in terms of, we want people to seek God for themselves on what's good for them, because we don't want it to be a performance thing where I feel like I have to have this new checklist of things I have to do in order to be faithful to God in business, right? But we say things like, how do you show up in the operations of your business? Are the operations of your business, the various areas, are they aligned with the ways of God? That's one aspect. What does generosity look like? How is that playing out with your business? How do you show up as a leader to the people who are in your company, to the people who are the customers? How does the kingdom impact your customer service? How does it impact strategy? All of those things, right? So we talk about that and the interaction, the personal interaction. We talk a lot about spiritual gifts as well. How do those actually get integrated and how are those played out in the work that you do, right? So basically we're working with people to develop their own, we'll call them kingdom. Well, I'm going to go with your language right now. There's kingdom performance indicators that support a holistic profitability focus for you in terms of how you show up in business. And then they then look at that and then see, are they growing in that? And the other thing is, I'll say this one too, because even when I talk about the operations, I don't just mean break down each part of your business and are those connected to the ways of God, but also how do you as a leader align with God in the day to day? Like I talk about partnering with God, not just doing business for God, but doing business with God, which is actually where the grace over grind message came from. And so there's so many pieces, but we like people to really develop the picture for themselves, because I just really believe that, every individual in their organization is a unique expression of God.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. There's verses in the Bible that have pierced me with regards to that, and I believe that it is, the kind of the number one leadership book that's out there. The concepts that are in there are taught everywhere, whether they're called biblical or Christian principles or not. But 1 Peter 4:8-10 is really clear. How do you show love for the people that you work with? How do you show hospitality to those individuals as well? And how are you utilizing the gifts you've been given to be successful? It's in the parables, wherever they are. It's all over that.
It's all over.
And it's not something that we have to your point, preach. I love hearing how somebody said, you showed up differently.
Yeah.
Inside of that space as well. And that's in and of itself is a big measurement. It's while we are called to be disciples, not necessarily about all of a sudden announcing that we want salvations to be a measurement in our business. It's not what it is. As much as in our hearts it should be. That's right. We love that, but it's not going to be one of those things that is there. And so I love that holistic profitability as well in terms of that term that you've used. But so let's talk about grace over grind and how you got to that piece. First, the word grace is one thing. When leaders hear that, at least I make this up. Okay. When leaders hear that we should use grace in our leadership, many of them interpret that, in my experience in coaching, as soft.
Right. Yes.
Tell me why grace is not soft and what does it mean to you?
It really isn't. It's divine enablement. It's empowering. It's not a soft thing. There's wisdom that comes in it. Yes, there's productive rest that comes with it. There's all types of goodness. You've got favor that comes with that. There's so much goodness in there. There's divine wisdom, just all of these things that are not soft in nature. They're just aligned and help you to thrive and to flourish. It's not a soft thing unless it needs to be in a moment, right? Sometimes, because I don't even think soft is a bad word. There's sometimes where someone might say, like, you might need to do something and handle something differently the way you might desire to react. But instead, through divine wisdom, you actually respond in an aligned way that might in your mind feel like it's soft, but it's not. It's exactly what's needed and necessary in that moment. And it's for the good of you and the good of those around you, right? So that's why I'm like, first of all, I don't think soft's a bad word, but it's not soft. It's aligned, right? And it's enabling and empowered.
Yeah. And you've got that. And so the acronym that you use for grace as well, in some of your advising and teaching, ground, refine, align, cultivate, embody. Where did that come from? And how did you all this? So, great play on words, grace. It just happens to line up good.
It's been such a wild journey. So this journey of grace over grind for me started like probably 12, 13 years ago. So it started with a scripture that's in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28-30. And this is a scripture and Jesus is saying, come to me, all of those who are weary. I will give you rest. He talks about how his yoke is easy and his burden is light. I don't have it memorized, but I do have it memorized in the Message Bible because that's the one that absolutely captured me. And it said, are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I'll never lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you will learn to live freely and lightly. So that was the thing that I heard that with factor. It was like, walk with me, work with me, keep company with me. Unforced rhythms of grace. Jesus, you need to show me this. I need to know. that began the journey many years ago of learning how to walk that out. So as I was learning that, then I also began sharing that. Now I was talking to only believers because I was doing the work of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. So here I was operating in that for many, many years. And then fast forward, then the Lord starts talking to me about, I want you to take the goodness of my grace and expand this message to people and organizations and make it accessible, the truth of this accessible to them without all of my scripture references and all of those things. So that has actually been the journey of the last 2 years, is then saying, okay, Lord, from what we've been walking out, what you've taught me, what I've seen, not only in my life, my business, but those that I've served, how do I now have language for this that can reach anybody? And then let you do what you do, right? And let this be just goodness, because it's goodness. Grace is available for all. And so how do I take this language and make it accessible? And so part of that was, how do I also make this practical from a framework perspective? Easy to remember, all of those things. And that's what led to, all right, if I've been talking about all these gifts of grace, now how do I integrate this in a model that people can do an assessment for the grind versus the grace in their leadership? And how can we begin to walk this out? And it's been such a cool last couple of years being able to present it in some new ways.
Love that. So much good right there. The assessment that you're talking about as well, and enabling. And this is me, it's the engineer in me that thinks about things in the form of matrices all the time, a 2x2 matrix. And I can see, grace on the x-axis and grind on the y-axis, because we need both in terms of inside of our business. And that, if we have all grace with no grind, we can tell what's going to happen. That's where it shows up as soft, I believe, at times. Is that
so when you read my book, I think you would actually say that differently after you read Grace Over Grind.
Okay. All right. Yep. I want to look at it. So tell me why I'd say it differently, though. Talk to me.
Yeah, because I don't believe that we actually need the grind, because the grind is defined as excessive hard work.
Oh,
so I believe in diligent work, right? Diligence and diligent work. So yes, we absolutely have to work, but you have grace-enabled work. Right? We don't have to do excessive hard work.
Diligent work versus excessive
hard work, which is even Merriam-Webster dictionary will give a definition for grind now. Like excessive.
I think we'd probably align pretty well. The matrix that I've used is truth and grace. It's even giving feedback, where if we give feedback to individuals and with all grace and no truth, it's just soft and it's just enabling. Yeah. But if we use all truth and no grace, we just come across as a bully. And that's where it feels like excessive as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when you explore like the various gifts and expressions of grace, you realize that there's nothing but goodness in there, and it's not defined as what some people would say in their mind as soft, right? There's just so much good in there. I think because divine wisdom is such a core part of the expression of grace, I'm walking that out. I believe that we can walk things out in grace and not ever feel like this isn't alignment, because it's all about being in alignment.
Thank you for that, because I think you're spot on. I certainly, in no way, shape, or form, feel like there's a downgrading to that word grace. Goodness, I mean, scripturally, it's one of the best gifts that we've been given.
Yes.
His grace, no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean that there's no justice in that as well, in terms of
absolutely. It's all in there.
Absolutely. So you've impacted, again, in the literature, say you've impacted over 1 million people. This is going to be an unfair question, probably. But what's the biggest common denominator you see in leaders who successfully move from this hustle or grind over to yielding or grace? What are they doing well?
Yeah. So I get to experience that best with those that I've either mentored directly or advised directly. And some of the themes that I see are, one of those is absolutely in people getting to a place where they're not in financial anxiety all the time. Like just the level of anxiety goes down dramatically. So they're not as impacted by every little thing, and then dealing with anxiety around things that instead of reacting, they're having to be like, to calm themselves, to get wisdom, to respond to things, right? Things happening around them, being able to operate in trust. I don't know all the details, but I know just enough to trust to walk out this next step without all the anxiety and all, and hanging on that, right? So I see that as an absolute thread across most, because a lot of business owners operate with a lot of anxiety and we don't have to, right? And so that's one I see as a core. I also see another thread with a lot of people who are beginning to untangle themselves from their identity being all about their work. So that's something that absolutely happens because there's a lot of business owners who absolutely get entangled in that kind of way where it's like, yes, I get to express myself through my work, but I am not my work. It's like my worth is not connected to what's happening here, all of those things. So I see a lot of untangling, which leads to a lot of other really great things in people's lives and businesses once you untangle that identity, mixed in there. So I've seen a lot of that. They don't come to me for that. That just happens in the goodness of it. A lot of people don't necessarily say those things out loud and say, this is an area I want help with, right? But yet it becomes part of the gift in the process, But I think that these levels of anxiety and the level of wisdom that people are walking out completely shifts. And the thing is that sometimes the beauty about divine wisdom is that, we have the wisdom that we get from our experiences, wisdom that we have borrowed from others, which is awesome. We love it. And when you add divine wisdom to that, that has you making some decisions that maybe on paper, that's not the decision you would have made. And yet, because of divine wisdom and you're trusting and walking that out, then you're seeing some really cool things on the other side of that. I've got stories for a long time for that. I've interviewed.
All right, give me one. Give me one of them. I want to hear one of them. I want to hear your most favorite one.
Yeah. So, okay. So one of my favorites is a client. She actually has multiple businesses. Her background is in interior design, John. Okay. She's interior design, but right now she has a genetics lab, a health tech company, and now more recently she has a new company that is actually working on early cancer detection from urine analysis. She has a interior design background. I don't know if you heard that part, but her adventure with God in the midst of how he was opening doors and how she was with courage walking in new areas that one would think you have no business being anywhere near this. She would just take step after step after step that led to the work she does now. And they actually now embrace grace over grind as part of theme in their company. So they'll have it written on the whiteboard. And when they have some meetings, like, I don't know the frequency of these meetings that they're doing, but they'll talk about like, what's something that happened that we can celebrate that was beyond us. Like this happened because of this particular thing or whatever. Like what's like something we can celebrate that's like, I didn't know this was going to happen. I had no idea this was going to happen. I hoped that this was going to happen. What does that look like? So I love that just who she is and her courage to walk this out has absolutely placed her in places that no one would expect her to, including herself. And that now she even gets to express that to the people that work with her, and how they're actually kind of growing in that as well, which I think is super fun.
Are you tired of being tired? I know I was. That's when I was glad to find Own It Coaching. Now my resting heart rate's down 20%, sleep quality up 300%. I just ran my first Spartan race at age 56. I feel better than I ever have. So if you're ready to stop settling and start owning your own health, go to coachjohngallagher.com/own it and set up a free call with the Own It coaching team. That's coachjohngallagher.com/own it. Now, let's get back to the episode. I love the stories that come along with that and the impact that we can have with regards to those things. I am curious, the other piece of that, and you haven't said this word exactly, but the grind word would be kind of the opposite of rest. And you talk a lot about rest as well and being able to get a return on the investment of rest. Tell me a little bit about that discipline for you.
Yeah. So for me, it shows up in a lot of different ways. One of those things is kind of as a core discipline of rest is that I don't do back to back to back to back to back meetings. I very specifically leave. These are super practical things. I'll leave 10-minute gaps. I will have a meeting that ends at 10. If I have advisory calls, they end in 15 minutes, not an hour, because then I always know that I'm going to have my 10 minutes to just be able to breathe, relax, do what I need to do, think, might even pray, depending on what's happening next, all of those things, right? So I very intentionally create my schedule in a way that allows me to have those spaces. And those spaces allow me to think, to be quiet, to hear, right? And so sometimes just to practically rest, whatever that is. right? But it allows me to kind of have a culture of rest in what I do. So that's one super practical thing. I love to have business meetings with God. So I'm seeking God around strategy. I seek God around all types of things. There's people that I'm praying for connected to business, all of these things. In Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, we teach how to have powerful business meetings with God, right? So, because I'm all about that partnership with God. That's part of rest, because part of rest is not also physical, but also that active awareness of God's presence with you, right?
So Shae, one of the things that you talk about as well is rest is very important, and rest over grind in terms of what goes on there. What are some of the disciplines that you employ to ensure that you get a good return on your investment and make sure that you rest?
Yeah, that's really good. So a lot of different ways. One super practical thing that I do is I don't fill my calendar with back to back to back to back to back activity. I very intentionally leave, for example, with meetings, I'll leave a 10-minute gap, sometimes a 15-minute gap between meetings so that I don't have to be rushing from one place to the other. A lot of times there's things that I need to actually kind of process from what I just walked out in the last meeting. Think about that. Sometimes it's praying before I'm going into the next thing. Sometimes it's just a moment to just physically just relax, So I definitely don't fill my calendar back to back. And so I mean that at a micro level in terms of day schedule, but I'm also like that in terms of being intentional around taking particular chunks of time away from work. Just the whole idea that I have to constantly be on, I don't subscribe to that at all, right? Because I need to be able to disconnect from all of the engagement in order to receive, right? And so that part's been super important for me. One of the other things that's just a part of my work life is what I call business meetings with God. And it's something actually I mentor and teach others in as well. Because, going back to the idea when we were talking about with Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, I'm all about with God, not just for God. So I actually want to seek God around things concerning business, concerning life, of course, as well, but absolutely concerning business. And so that's something that I specifically take time to do. And when I think about rest, John, I'm not thinking just about rest from a physical perspective. I'm also thinking about rest from just an active awareness of the presence of God with me, the active awareness of the presence of divine wisdom that I can seek with me at all times, as opposed to I got to do all the things in my own strength and then take a little break, go get with God, take a break later, right? So I kind of look at it holistically.
Love that. Love to look at that. The business meeting with God.
Yeah.
What's the agenda for that meeting?
Yeah. Okay. So the agenda, because everyone's always like, I never give blueprints. I give frameworks, but not blueprints, right? Because everyone has their own unique thing with.
Sure.
God.
Fair enough. What's
right.
your agenda with God?
Yeah. So for me, it does change, but oftentimes it looks like there's certain things that I have that I want to pray about concerning people that are either their clients or their situations or team members, etc. There's prayer. There's a lot of listening. So there will be questions that I have that I'm pondering on, that I have been pondering on, and I'm going to pray and submit those to God. He says, if any man lacks wisdom, ask God, who gives us to it generously, right? So there's things that I have that are just questions, but I don't just talk. I'm also quiet to hear. And so there's a lot. So I like to journal things that are coming. The idea of hearing from God and discerning God's voice has been a thing that was cultivated over many years of growing in relationship with God. So I'm sitting, I'm hearing, I'm writing, I'm just thinking through certain things. There's absolutely prayer for me. And sometimes, depending on how everything's going, sometimes I'll get like a scripture reference that'll come to me or a thought. So then I have to go look up and see where it is. And then I end up in a whole few minute Bible study around things. And I'm asking Holy Spirit, okay, help me connect these pieces, right? So it's a very kind of organic time. And that's in the set aside time. But I tell you what, John, I don't just have set aside times. It's also one of those things that it's like going back to that rest concept of God with me. I can do a business meeting with God anytime. It doesn't have to be the set aside time in the morning. It could be in that 2 minutes before I go into the meeting. It can be while I'm actually talking to you. I believe in talking to you and also listening at the same time, right? So, so that's just kind of become part of the lifestyle. But I know people love frameworks. So I absolutely actually even teach frameworks, a prayed framework on how to have powerful business meetings with God.
Okay. All right. I mean, I love frameworks as well, all the way through.
Yes, I love them. I love them. Yes.
Including kind of, I often refer to it, you touched on the 10 minutes. I say it's the 47 most powerful minutes in a leader's day. Yeah. Is that you schedule a 60-minute meeting, but you only work for 47.
Yeah,
it's
I love
actually
it.
The 13 that or whatever, the 10.
Yeah.
that can be the most, because one of the very first things I do when I start to work with a leader is I show them your calendar. And to your point, back to back to back, like nobody can do that. I mean, it's
Nobody can do
impossible
that.
to do.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, it's probably just upbringing more than anything else, but I'm like, heaven forbid you can go to the restroom between meetings so that you can prepare yourself, let alone pray or
Yeah.
prepare or just, sit down and take a
Yeah.
breath in between those meetings that you
That's
have. But I
right.
often encourage those meetings to end on the 10. They're like, well, it's so difficult to set it up in Outlook. I'm like, give me a break.
No, it's
Give me a
not,
break.
right? It's not
Right? Get over,
difficult.
yeah. Right. It's like 2 extra clicks. So.
Right. I'm with you, John.
All right, let's go back to the book. I have a couple questions specific, not necessarily to the content of the book, but the concept. Look, you've the last 2 books in terms of having the grace over grind and grace with purpose in terms of the 2 most recent books, but you've got your wisdom in many books over the years. Specifically, when you're writing, who are you writing to, and like what do you end up writing for as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for many years, because I was founder and also CEO of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, I was writing specifically to the Christ following entrepreneur who wants to, who really desires to grow in holistic profitability, right? They want to have eternal impact and financial, returns, all the things. So I wrote almost all of my books are written to that entrepreneur, small business owner, etc., who's a Christ follower. The last book that I wrote, which is Grace Under Pressure, that's the first book that I wrote that takes a lot of the principles from Grace Over Grind and presents it in a story. Now, there's a little nonfiction section in the back that breaks down aspects of the story so that you can kind of pull it all together. But that's the first time that I've done a book that it's not actually faith-centered overtly at all. And that gives me the opportunity to share this message with a broader audience and allow that to be a seed for growth, because it's all around being able to create not only a personal leadership culture, but also a culture in your organization where both people and results can flourish, right? Not results without the people flourishing, and not the people flourishing, but no results, right? But how do we create that leadership culture? So this last book that I wrote is the most broadest audience that I've written for, which is really leaders of teams. They might be corporate. I have a heart for business owners, so I tend to talk to business owners a lot. But business owners, leaders, I've had corporate execs that read it, so it's been broadly a leadership message in the Grace Under Pressure book.
Love that. Grace Under Pressure. And I love story book, if you will, the fable that's written. I mean, there are many authors that do it very well. Patrick Lencioni.
Oh,
Andy
he's great.
Andrews.
Yeah.
Just so many good ones that exist in that space. Have there been writers that have influenced you on your journey?
I'm going to tell you the inspiration for that book in terms of writing it in that way. Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver with John David Mann, the 2 of them together. I read The Go-Giver when I was at IBM still. And it was really impactful for me. I've actually met Bob, love Bob. And I knew at that time, I was still at IBM. But I remember saying to myself when I read it, one day I'm going to write a book and deliver a message in an impactful way like this. I remember and I had no idea. I wasn't anywhere near the work that I'm doing now at that time. So that was a seed sown many, many years ago. And I remember when I was beginning to think about maybe 5 years ago, this book was Grace Under Pressure was like a year ago now, but like 5 years ago, I was starting to think, I think I am going to write a book like this. I reached out to John. It was like, please give me advice on writing a compelling story, because I knew he was behind that story aspect of it. And so John David Mann and Bob Burr, absolutely my inspiration for writing a story that really engages people. And then in it, they grab hold of a message within it.
Love that. I want to ask you something. Are you a baseball fan at all?
No, I played softball as a kid, but I'm not a baseball fan.
Okay. So, the baseball players in today's world, with this college sports, even softball, they have a walk-up song. You're a speaker, you're a writer. When you walk up on stage, what's your walk-up song that introduces Shae Bynes?
And do you mean that literally when I speak? Because rarely do I have someone who asks me to do it. I've only done it once.
Another similar one might be to say, what's your karaoke song? Like, what would you sing? What would define you the most in terms of what's there?
Well, it was so funny that you asked that question, because the one time that I actually had someone ask me what song I wanted to have playing when I came on, the song was called Light 'em Up.
Light them up.
Yes, and there's a
There you
really
go.
great beat behind it. There's a really great beat behind it too. So it kind of went with the Chief Fire Igniter theme, right?
Okay. Yeah,
I'm an
it actually
activator.
absolutely makes Chief Fire Igniter work really well.
Yes, that's it. I'm an activator. I want the stories that I share to really spark a seed of curiosity for people and activate them to take a next step.
Shae, I'm watching our time. And by the time we get this on, folks won't notice that in the middle of our conversation, the power went out and cut us off, but we'll fix it so it doesn't come through that way. But I still want to honor your time and your story about ending things in 10 minutes. I have enjoyed this conversation tremendously, and I hope almost that we get to do something like this again. How can folks get in touch with you and learn more about you so that they can see what's going on, your books, your advisory services, Kingdom, a driven entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to ShaeBynes.com, that will connect you with all the things. You'll actually see when you go to ShaeBynes.com, those who are interested in that grace effect kind of framework that we alluded to earlier, there's an article right there on the homepage you can link to, and there's an assessment there if you want to take that. But if you go to ShaeBynes.com, you'll find the world of all things that I'm involved in. If you're active on LinkedIn, you can certainly connect with me there. I would just ask that when you hit the connect button to connect, let me know that you were listening to the Uncommon Leader podcast. I'd love to know that when you reach out.
That would be great. I think that is. And there's cold connections are always tough to get to. So you can have that message that you heard.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed this. Well, we've come to the end of our conversation today, but I'm going to give you the last word as I do all my first time guests. I'm going to give you a billboard, Shae. You can put any message you want to on that billboard and put it anywhere you want to. What's the message going to be on that billboard, and why do you put that there?
Well, because Grace Over Grind has become a life message for me, I'm going to say the billboard will say, Grace will take you where grinding never will.
So good. So good. Shae, this has been a pleasure. I really have enjoyed it. Thank you for adding value to the listeners of the Uncommon Leader podcast. I wish you the best. All the best wishes going forward.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
That was an energizing conversation. I really enjoyed that with Shae Bynes. I hope you did as well. Some of the things that she talked about with regards to grace over grind and how ultimately, we don't have to grind or hustle on a regular basis, and the importance of rest in our business to be successful. I love some of the concepts that you talked about. I hope you'll go out and follow Shae on LinkedIn and go to her website and see about all the good things she has going on. Hey, if you heard this message and someone else that you know needs to hear this message, please do me a favor. Why don't you share it and let them know about it so we can get it in the hands of more leaders? And I'd really love it if you could go out and leave a 5-star review on one of the platforms that you listen, whether that's on Spotify or on Amazon Music or on Apple Podcasts. That's how we move this podcast up into more listeners' hands, and I would appreciate if you could share it. Until next time, go and grow champions.